What's the difference between a violin and a fiddle?
How many dancers should an orchestra have?
What did run the gamut originally mean?
We're hoping to bring music to your ears in what promises to be a melodically geeky episode of Words Unravelled. Welcome to another Words Unravelled. I'm Rob Watts from the YouTube channel Rob Words.
And I'm Jess, Zafarris, author of the etymology books Once Upon a Word and Words from Hell. And today we are tuning up our knowledge of musical terms, are we not?
Yes, we are. If music be the food of etymological geekery, let us play on, Jess, and talk about where some of these terms come from. And we should start, as we always do, with the etymology of our theme, which is music. Where does that come from?
Well, it comes from the muses, of course. These are the mythological figures who give us both the inspiration for the music we create and the word music itself. This is from the same root as lots of words related to memory, ultimately, in terms of its Proto-Indo-European root. But music itself shares its root most closely with the word muse, one of the 9 goddesses who presided over art and science and were thought to inspire people with ideas for new creations.
So it means art of the muses.
That's correct. Curiously, one of its closer relatives is the word museum, also, at least in name, figuratively temples to the muses who would inspire creation and invention.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about musical instruments and musical terms. Musical instruments. Let's start with that. Where does one find a lot of musical instruments?
Well, in the orchestra, of course.
Of course.
Did you know, like, the orchestra has changed meanings several times. It's an old word, but it predates what you might think of as like a large-scale symphony orchestra, because the word is quite a bit older than a large-scale symphony orchestra. In ancient Greek theater, it was the semicircular space in front of the stage where the chorus of dancers performed. So it's thought to literally mean the dancing place.
No way.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that isn't really happening among the orchestra, right?
Nowadays we're sitting for the most part. And then in ancient Rome, the orchestra was reserved for important people. So you'd sit closer to the stage, which, you know, we kind of use that word for floor seats nowadays, too. If you're sitting in the orchestra, that doesn't mean you're sitting on top of the bassoonist. You are sitting in proximity to the stage.
He'd hate that.
And then with the rise of classical orchestral music in the classical music period in the early to mid 1700s, we started seeing it as either the place where the musicians perform during an opera or a concert, or the musicians themselves.
I want to interject with something here. Do you know what an empty orchestra is?
I mean, it sounds like an orchestra without any people in it.
That's what it is. And empty orchestra is the literal meaning of the word karaoke.
Oh, what? Oh, yes. No, I didn't know this. That's so cool. I totally forgot about this.
Yeah, I thought you would. I was trying to find a clever clever way to get this one in there. But you know, the oke at the end of there is actually a Japanese take on the word orchestra. It's short for
cool.
orchestra.
Oh, my goodness.
Karaoke, empty orchestra.
Incredible. I love it.
Should we talk about some of the members of the orchestra?
We should. One of my favorite things as I was looking through the origins of various instruments, it became clear that basically everything in the string section is a viola.
Yeah, it's the violin family, right? They're called, but violin itself just means little viola, right?
Right. Adorably, the Latin verb that all of these words come from is vitulare, which means to exult or to be joyful, and was also related to Vitula, the Roman goddess of joy and victory.
Right. So they're all in some way evoking joy. So what have we got? We've got the violin, which is like the smallest of them. Then the viola. Then you've got the cello, which I know is short for violoncello.
Mm-hmm.
We just shortened it, which is really odd, because what we've done there is we've taken the suffix that makes it small and made that the word, which is an unusual thing. It'd be like calling a trumpet, which means a small trump, just an it, but we don't. We call it. Yeah, it's a bit weird to do that.
In the Baroque period, similarly sized instruments were sometimes called a viola da braccio, an arm viola, compared to a viola da gamba, a leg viola, which to my untrained eye looks like a cello because you position it in a similar way. It's denoting where you hold the instrument.
This whole thing's actually really confusing, because there's also an instrument that's invented at the same time as the violin, or within a few decades of it, called the viol, which is a 6-string instrument, but is the predecessor to the double bass, which is sometimes called a violone, or the violone, which means a big viol, is an early version of the double bass, which is called a contrabass. Oh gosh, it is really confusing. But a double bass is bigger than a cello, which is bigger than a viola, which is bigger than a violin, right? By the way, our theme tune, that's played on the cello by multi-talented Martin Williams, who is also editing this video as I speak.
And how did we end it?
He also plays the piano in our theme tune, which is also a very satisfying etymology of its own.
It means quiet, right?
It means quiet. Yeah, exactly. But it's short for pianoforte. So that means quiet loud. And the reason it was called that is that it was a form of harpsichord that could be played both at full volume, but also through use of damping, could be played quietly. So even pianoforte is a shortening of a longer term. And that term is, I'm going to have to read it. It's gravicembalo col piano e forte, which means harpsichord with quiet and loud.
That was beautifully pronounced.
Maybe.
I mean, I think so anyway.
Thank you. Says
it's the person who doesn't know.
Well, Italian is beautiful even when you get it wrong, isn't it? That's the thing with Italian.
I'm glad you mentioned a harpsichord, because a harp and the first element of harpsichord are some of the few Germanic terms on this list that we'll talk about, right?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, harp is an Old English word. Its root was ultimately adopted into the Latin and Italian and etc. words that would ultimately become like harpsichord and be used across several languages. Before we fully move on, since we're still talking a little bit about strings here.
Oh, yes.
The word fiddle is another Germanic one, and all of its Germanic cognates are also thought to be from the same root as violin and viola.
Do you know the difference between a violin and a fiddle?
I know this one. Should I just go for it?
It works better in your accent than mine.
A violin has a brown neck at the end of it, and a fiddle has a red neck at the end of it.
Oh, wait, hold on. That is not the joke I was going to tell.
What were you going to tell?
I definitely could not have told that one, by the way. My version of it is much more gentle, although kind of playing on the same idea. A violin has strings and a fiddle has strings.
I like that one too. I almost like that one better.
I have to credit Erica, one of the subscribers to my newsletter, who sent me that.
That's so
I can't believe we were going at the same.
Two variations on the same joke.
Two variations, both of them mildly offensive. Indeed. Although funnily enough, I tend to think of a fiddle as being an Irish instrument. I guess I would do this side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I mean, it totally depends on what else is happening in the song, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's I mean, and Irish music heavily influenced bluegrass, which is where you would hear fiddles the most in American music.
Oh, and banjos, of course. Banjos. Do we know the etymology of banjo?
We don't off the top of our head, but we can find out real quick.
Let's look it up. Should we look it up?
Yeah, let's look it up.
I'll race you.
Ooh, it's an African word. I think I did know this one. I think it might actually be in my kid's book, though I wrote it several years ago, so I may have forgotten it. But no, it's probably from a Bantu word, like mbanza, which resembles a banjo.
One of the themes that comes up when talking particularly about musical genres and dance genres is this journey that words take from Africa to the Americas, obviously as part of the slave trade. Mm-hmm. And that's why an awful lot of musical genre, but also particularly forms of dance around the Caribbean in particular, or in South America, was like tango, which are actually imports from Africa to the Americas, and then they get re-imported back over to Europe as a new cultural phenomenon.
It's amazing how art travels around the world, right?
It is, yes. The story is not always a happy one. Speaking of stringed instruments from around the world, we could talk about the ukulele.
Yes.
The jumping flea.
I love that one.
One of which I've got right here.
Oh, do you really? Are you a talented ukuleleist?
I wouldn't like to say, but I think it will come as no surprise to people that I play the ukulele. I think I'm exactly the sort of person who would play a ukulele. I've got quite a lot of them. But the reason I've got it, actually, is because Are you aware of the little ditty that ukulele players say to themselves as they're tuning up? This is not a Hawaiian thing. Obviously, the word is Hawaiian. It's Hawaiian for jumping flea. There's a little sort of mnemonic that ukulelists say to themselves. They chant as they're tuning up that is a little nod to what the word means.
Oh, tell me.
It's "My dog has fleas." But you have to say it, "My dog has fleas," or "My dog has fleas."
Oh, look at that.
That's how you know you're in tune. I was in the wrong key, which is, I don't sing when I play, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, cute little instrument from Hawaii. Can we talk about some more unusual instruments from around the world? Because I know you've got some interesting etymologies for us.
Well, while we're on strings, the word sitar is from a Persian word meaning 3-string. Despite its name, modern sitars typically have 18 to 21 strings. Most of them are sympathetic strings that resonate but are never plucked. But 12th century sitars had 3 strings.
Fascinating.
Another interesting one from around the world that doesn't have strings, moving on from now that we have strung out these strings a bit.
Very good.
The didgeridoo, just a very satisfying word to say, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's thought to be onomatopoetic, imitating the sound that it makes. The word started showing up in the early 1900s in English language reports about the instrument, which was created by Indigenous Australian or Aboriginal people. Some of them claim it meant like hollow bamboo, but I couldn't find any evidence of this, and it seems to just be imitating the sound, which is also sometimes spelled as like didgery, didgery, didgery.
Right. So they're just saying, oh, they've got this instrument over there that makes a sort of didgeridoo noise. Basically.
Yes, and you know, some archaeologists, anthropologists think it may be one of the oldest wind instruments still in use in the world. It's at least 1,500 years old, but could be as old as like 40,000. Developed by Aboriginal people of Northern Australia in particular. It has a few other names in Yolinu. I hope I said that right. Yolinu Mata, which is a language from that era. It's called a Yidaki or a Mandapul. I bet some folks in our comments can give us some more information on that too.
That's fascinating. It might be nice to resurrect or widen the use of one of those more original terms that's not just, based on the sort of droning sound that it makes.
Are you aware of the instrument that doesn't have any strings and you don't touch at all?
Oh, okay. I think I know it. The theremin?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we're moving.
I do a really good theremin impression. Hold on.
This is astounding.
Yeah.
I'm learning all sorts of new talents you have today.
Yeah, that's it. My ukulele and theremin band is going gangbusters.
I love it.
Sorry, that was an unhelpful digression from.
No, I disagree completely. That was astounding.
Tell us about what theremin actually means then. It's a very sort of, well, I think of it as a sort of futuristic type word, but I bet the etymology of it isn't so futuristic, is it?
It's an eponym. Leon Theremin patented the device. It's not that interesting, but I think it's so interesting the way it works, though. It's got 2 metal antennas, which function not as radio antennas, but are like position sensors. So they sense the relative position of your hands and control oscillators for the frequency and the amplitude.
It's so clever. It looks like magic.
It does.
And it sounds otherworldly as well. It sounds like it's beyond the realms of normality.
I would argue that music in general falls under the like real life magic kind of category of things out there. The whole Terry Pratchett, it doesn't stop being magic just because you know how it works. I think that's true of music.
Indeed, yeah. It's something that humans have achieved in a unique fashion on this planet. So birds have their song, but it's not the same. So we've talked about Leon Theremin and his instrument. Let's talk about another instrument that's named after a man, the saxophone.
That's right. That's Adolf Sax, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, he was actually a Belgian instrument maker, and he is credited. Well, in fact, he had patents for 46 different instruments. They're all kind of variations on 4 instruments, each of which he named after himself, which I think is quite funny. So the saxophone
I will make this work.
Yeah. So he came up with 8 types of saxophone. And it's not worth knowing really what they are. They're just of different registers and different keys. And he patented those in 1846. But he'd already tried to make the sax horn take off, the sax tromba as well. And later he would also attempt to make the sax tuba a member of the average orchestra, because what he was determined to do was bridge the gap between the woodwind instruments and the brass instruments. So he created this, essentially was a brass clarinet, and that's what the saxophone is. And yeah, it's named after him. The phone bit we know from Greek phonos, that just means sound. So it's the sax sound.
And one of the cooler looking instruments when you're playing it, I think.
Yeah, and it's just got a cool sound to it. He was onto a good thing, and I guess that feels relatively recent, 1846, to be inventing something that must feel like it's been around forever.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons he invented 40 of them is, or however many, is that it was kind of met with a little skepticism and disdain by classicists, but vaudeville and ragtime and jazz made it legit.
Right, and it took off much more, as so often is the case, sort of after he was gone. You know, he didn't really get to see it in its heyday, but he created something brilliant and stuck his name on it. And so when we talk about the sax, we're talking about Adolf Sax.
Now, while we're on woodwinds, do you know the original English word for an oboe?
I do know, because I told you in a past episode.
Did you?
Yes. It was an hautbois or an hautboy, or variations on that, sort of an English attempt at the French hautbois, which means high wood, right?
I've also seen it as just straight up hautboy.
Yeah, really. I love all of these. Hautboy, that was what hautboy is, a good old name for it. You can find that in dictionaries as an old name for the oboe. I like that one a lot. Yeah.
And it means high-pitched wood, right?
Yeah, it literally means high wood, hautbois. The word oboe, I think, is actually an Italian take on the French term that then ended up coming into English.
Where should we go from here? Should we stay in the woodwind section, go brass? Should we try percussions?
If you've got more on the woodwinds and the brass, go ahead.
The trouble with the brass is it's a little bit like the strings, except even less interesting, because everything is a word for a tube. Like
a tuba.
Yeah. And a trumpet is a little horn, and a trombone is a large trumpet, and all kinds of things. It's pretty straightforward in that section.
Oh, okay. I'd never noticed. So that O-N-E at the end of trombone is the same as the O-N-E at the end of violone, right? That means
I believe so, yeah. Trombone. Great trumpet, literally.
Oh, now if I take nothing else away from this episode, that we've got that. And also the trump, by the way, is British slang for a fart.
We didn't talk about that.
A little toot. I can't stop reiterating that one. I don't know why.
I mean,
but it is.
I can't imagine why that would be relevant.
Stop it.
Anyway, on that percussive note, shall we talk about the percussion section?
Yeah, so I was looking up drum. I thought, that's just going to be something really simple. It's just going to be some Germanic noise that's the same across all of the Germanic languages. But it's actually a little bit more interesting than that, because the word drum is thought to actually be an abbreviation of a longer term. It's thought to come from the word drumslade, which is recorded before drum on its own. And slade is related to other words in other Germanic languages, like the German Schlag or Schlager, which means to hit. So a drumslade was a drum beat, and it originally referred to the sound, and then that word was then transferred to the instrument itself. So drum is short for drumslade. There are words that are very similar to drum in old Germanic languages, where they're like trom or trum or something like that, but they're always part of some sort of compound. For example, you've got a trumslag, I think, in Old Frisian, which again is just like a drum beat. So yeah, actually drum is a little bit more interesting than I thought it was.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Also, Drumslade sounds like it should be a heavy metal band.
I think it should.
if it's not already.
let's make it happen, Jess. Be the first theremin and ukulele heavy metal band.
I need to see your full ukulele collection.
Do you know about George Formby, who's this Second World War entertainer, played the ukulele, banjo ukulele, really popular. He had a ridiculous sort of voice. He used to sing songs about like window cleaners. Hold on, there's this one that goes, "It's a job that just suits me, a window cleaner you would be if you could see what I can see when I'm cleaning windows."
That's adorable. This is so good. This is so good.
But it is all about how this window cleaner spots women, in their underwear while he's doing his job. Now, you want to become a window cleaner like me, mate.
I was not
George
expecting
Formby.
to be serenaded on this podcast. This is a delight. We were on the topic of percussion instruments, and I do think, although I think we've mentioned them in a previous episode, I think we should at least nod to the xylophone and the glockenspiel because they're satisfying instruments and their names are also satisfying and fun to say. You know the difference between these, right?
Yeah, I do, because the etymology tells you the difference, because I actually find it quite hard to know, because xylophone, the xylo at the start of there is the same as in the word xylem. Actually, why am I referencing a word that fewer people are going to know? And it means wood, right? So xylophone means wood sound. Glockenspiel is German for bell play. Can I throw the marimba in, which is technically a type of xylophone, but it's got its origins in the Kimbundu language, which is spoken primarily in Angola. And the ma is a plural prefix, and the rimba means wooden bar. So it means wooden bars. So it's actually got a very similar etymology to the word xylophone itself.
A lot of these are like they're referencing the sort of the features on them. I was reminded of the snare drum since we were on drums a minute ago. The snare is the string stretched across the lower head of the drum, as I understand, which makes that sort of rattling vibration sound.
Yeah, it just sounds like a snare, doesn't it? For some reason in my head, snare just fits perfectly to that sound.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like it's a word for a string or a chord that dates back to basically every Germanic language.
Oh, so were the original snares, were they a string-loaded trap?
A noose, a snare, yeah.
How about some sexy Italian terms? Because we've already touched on the beauty of that language, and it is, all over the language of music.
Some of these, although they're understood to be largely used in music, I would say like a lot of these words for like tempo tend to infiltrate our other conversations.
Yeah, we talk about like a crescendo, right? We might talk about something building to a crescendo, and that actually just comes from the Italian for to increase.
I'm partial to the tempo markings. So adagio literally means at ease. You play slow and relaxed. Allegro means fast and lively. Literally cheerful though. And then andante means walking, a moderate walking pace. Presto, very fast. Largo, slow and broad. And then moderato, which means moderate.
And you got legato, which means smoothly, from the Italian for to bind, so sort of to bind together into a sort of smooth surface. It's related to the word league. And staccato, which is in a choppy fashion, is from the Italian for detached.
Interesting.
We talked about piano and forte, meaning quietly and loudly, respectively. But you can also have pianissimo and fortissimo, which mean very quietly and very loudly, respectively. And then you can also have a mezzo, which is the Italian for middle or for half, and that means sort of quite. So you can have mezzo piano, and you're saying quite loudly, quite quietly.
Some of our symbols are cool too. A coda is a tail. It's your concluding passage of music. That's also related to the word coward indirectly via the French court.
What's the semantic link between those?
This is a bit of a topic of debate, but the thought here is that it implies an animal's tail being tucked between its legs. Same idea for the word cowed, which also has like another theoretical origin, but chronologically, it seems to make the most sense for coward, which has that pejorative ending on it, to have ultimately been inspired by the word for tail.
So a coda is a tail, and a coward is one who frequently has their tail between their legs.
That is one theory anyway, and that seems to be the presiding theory. Let's see, we've also got an arpeggio, which actually means harp-like, and is ultimately related to that Germanic word harp.
Oh, right. So there's a little bit of Germanic influence into the Italian there.
This is more of a mark, and honestly, this is a broadly used term. It's definitely not related solely to music. We use it in tons of other contexts, but I love that the word accent means a song added to speech. Cantus was a word for a song, and that add prefix on the front means adding song to speech. So even when we speak in an accent, we are singing our distinctive songs.
I love that. And that's obviously related to the word chant, right? The word chant is from that same canto. Oh, also the word cant as well, incidentally. Yeah, when we talk about sort of slang language, cant, that ultimately comes down to the sort of sing-songy way that people would use these languages, I suppose.
So have we run the gamut on this episode on musical terms? I know we have more, but are we good here?
I think you're only asking because you want to talk about Run the Gamut.
Guilty as charged.
This has got a great origin in music. Please do tell us about it.
Well, to understand this idiom, we have to step back in time to medieval music theory and meet a guy named Guido of Arezzo. He was a Benedictine monk in the 11th century, and he made it easier to memorize and read music with a system called psalmization, which evolved into the solfege system we know today, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti.
Yeah, or sometimes do, re, mi, fa, si. I've heard that one as well.
Yes.
I didn't know about that until I was researching this, because I get all of my information about music from The Sound of Music and the songs therein.
Speaking of which, okay, I heard a funny anecdote about this the other day, so I'm going to share it. Julie Andrews couldn't quite get that song down. Like she had sung and she had played the guitar, but she wasn't as used to playing them while singing, which totally can relate. But apparently someone offered her a little slip of schnapps or something, and then she absolutely nailed it in one take.
That's exactly how it works, isn't it? I mean, I know there's a point at about 2 pints and a third where I'm better at absolutely everything. Languages, foreign languages, playing pool, darts.
Anything that requires like you to think but not think too hard.
Yeah, exactly. Don't overthink. Yeah, that's it. That's what it does. It just releases you from that. Anyway, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti/si, then back to do, the solfeggio system. Tell us more about that.
So in Guido's time, it wasn't do, re, mi. It was ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, which was taken from a Latin hymn for St. John the Baptist's day. Ut queant laxis re sonare fibris mira gestorum famuli tuorum solve pollutus labius reatum sancte Johannes. Excuse my Latin everything. But the syllables that began, like 6 of these words became that medieval hexachord, the 6-note series. And then C was eventually added from the first letters of the 2 words in the last line, Sancte Johannes. And then in the 1800s, Sarah Glover, who was an English music teacher, renamed C to T. So that's where we got the T at the end.
That's how we end up with both of them. Wonderful. I have a little translation of that hymn. So that your servants may, with loosened voices, resound the wonders of your deeds, clean the guilt from our stained lips, O Saint John. It's that Saint John at the end that gives us the Sancte Johannes. And so how does all of this get us to running the gamut?
Running the gamut. Okay, you can see that we're running the length of the hexachord, basically. But where's the gamma from, right?
So the ut is that first note that becomes do, but at this point it is the ut at the start of ut queant laxis. Right?
Exactly. But back in the day, the very first note on Guido's scale wasn't an A, but was a note below A, marked with the Greek letter gamma. And this is where my music theory knowledge runs out. So excuse me if you know more about the reasoning behind that. But the combination gamma ut became gamut, the term for the complete range of notes in medieval music.
Fantastic. So to run the whole gamut is to perform every note on the scale.
From high to low.
Beautiful. And now I feel we can say we've run the whole gamut on music. Although, actually, I don't think we have. There's plenty more to say about this. We haven't talked about genres and such, but we will return to this subject without a doubt in the future.
Let's revisit with a little jazz and rock and roll.
Oh, yeah. Love that rock and roll.
Cures the blues every time.
We'll catch you next time. It was words unravelled, words unravelled.
I haven't tuned it or anything, but I'm worried that if I do, the strings will snap.
Oh, yes.
That's not bad, is it?
I like it a lot. I like that note at the end as well. Like words left unsaid.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Words left unsaid. I like it.